something like this might work between these two notes. It's similar motion, meaning they're moving in the same direction but by two different intervals, but one of them is going by a step. So that can help it to work. Okay? All right, the next one. Don't write more than 3 parallel imperfect consonances in a row. So imperfect consonances are like thirds and sixes. So don't write more than 3 of those in a row. And that means like 3 thirds in a row or 3 sixes in a row. I think you can go back and forth between thirds and sixes and get up to 4 if you have to, which is kind of what we've done here in our piece. But in general, we avoid that. We need something different than thirds and sixes all the time. Okay, next one. Include a mix of perfect and imperfect consonances with more imperfect consonances than perfect. Okay, so what they're saying is do some perfect consonances, octaves and fifths in unisons, but do mostly imperfect consonances like thirds and sixes. So another kind of arbitrary rule. They're saying do some of those, but not too many. Do some perfect consonances, but don't go nuts, is kind of my translation of that. Okay, up next. Avoid dissonant harmonic intervals, including perfect fourths, and accidentals other than at the cadence. So the cadence, which is, I think, a term we haven't really talked about. The cadence means the end, or the approach to the end, more accurately. So the cadence is from here to here. Okay, so the 5-1 that's kind of happening here. What they're saying is avoid accidentals. Don't do anything out of key unless you have to get the best cadence, right? That would be a case of like raising this if we were in a minor key. Next one. Avoid dissonant melodic intervals. Examples: leaps of a minor seventh, major seventh, diminished fifth, augmented fourth, or augmented second in minor. So don't use those intervals. Next one. Write leaps sparingly. Approach and leave by step in contrary motion if possible, and set with a step in the other part, preferably in contrary motion to the leap. Don't set a leap in one voice against a leap in the other. So use leaps sparingly. We don't like to see more than one leap per part in a piece like this. Next one. Give your melodic line an interesting contour. Should not be static, repeating notes, or circling around one note. Keep the ranges of the lines distinct. Don't overlap or cross voices. So a cross voice would be something like that's a crossed voice. Or this note in the upper voice is actually lower than this note, right? Because this note, if I put it on this staff, would be this B underneath this note. It's a crossed voice. We don't like that. There are other things called voice crossings that we'll talk more about later. And the other thing they're saying here is melodic line, interesting contour. So don't circle around one note too much. So if like this E, we wouldn't want to go above the E and then below the E and then back to the E and just hover around the E. We kind of want to move around and not give too much emphasis to a particular note for too long. Okay, last one. Aim for primarily stepwise motion with no more than 2 melodic skips or leaps in a row. So we like stepwise motion. Don't do more than 2 skips or leaps in a row. Pretty easy one. Okay, so that's a summary of our main rules of first species counterpoint. And that is where we're going to leave it. So you know the rules of first species counterpoint. Now, what's going to come next is I'm going to give you a worksheet to work on, and then that's it for this class, actually. So please practice this. It takes a lot of practice. Get that Riemenschneider book. That's a good way to practice. And have some fun with it. Okay, but I do have a handful more. I do have a couple more videos for you on this topic before the end. So stick around. We're not done yet.